Hello Facebook, it's Reid from readaboutsex.com. Let me just tweak this, sorry. Oh, there we go. It is Friday, and it is the last day of June. So happy last day of Pride Month, everyone. I've got my Camp Beaverton for Wayward Girls fundraiser tank top on, and campbeaverton.org, I believe, is the website if you're going to be going to Burning Man, and you want to camp with a bunch of queer lady folk. And little known fact, 10 years ago, or actually 11 years ago, because this is Camp Beaverton's 10th anniversary. And that always was weird, right? Like, the 10th anniversary is really the 11th year? Like, how do you figure that out? And say hi wherever you are today, and then we're going on the train tracks. I promised a walk on the train tracks yesterday. So here we go. Let's see. Look both ways before crossing the train tracks. And that's the train track there. And here it is there. I'm going to walk this way because the lighting's pretty good, I guess. There we go. And this track that I'm walking on is defunct. Nothing goes on this track anymore. This one that I'm walking on. So I'm not in danger. You do not have to worry. Actually, I'm going to do it this way because I want to show you the graffiti. There you go. So, little known fact about Camp Beaverton for Wayward Girls. 10 years ago, so I guess what, 11 years ago, 2006, whatever that is, I was one of the founders of Camp Beaverton for Wayward Girls. A friend of mine who was a lesbian was going to Burning Man, and it was my first year for going to Burning Man. We went together with some other friends, and she was very confused because she couldn't figure out who were the lesbians. She couldn't find out where the lesbians were. And in a fit of dusty frustration, she told me, she's like, Reid, create a camp where the lesbians will come to me. And I was like, I could do that. Like, I know how to create that. We also have tons of blackberries here. Ooh, they're sour. Not ripe yet. And so, at her request, I summoned up my courage, and I helped create the largest, 10 years later, the largest queer women's camp on the playa at Burning Man. And I have the great pleasure of naming the women-only play party on the playa. It's called the Strap-On-a-thon. Not that you have to have a strap-on. And every year, the Beavers of Camp Beaverton have a meeting and have all these conversations and try to figure out, the policies for the next year, because the conversations about women-only space and lesbian-identified space and transgender space, those things have really progressed and evolved in the last 10 years, 11 years. And so it's kind of a living, breathing camp every year. And now, all these years later, there's Camp Gender Blender, which is a queer camp for all, as you would think, gender blendering. And so there's a lot of really cool stuff that wasn't necessarily happening in mass at Burning Man 11 years ago. And so I just wanted to give a shout out to people who are still looking for camps at Burning Man. I will not be camping with the Beavers. I will be at Beaverton. I'm welcome there. But I will not be camping because I'm a cisgendered guy, and that's not what the camp is for. But all people of all genders are welcome to stop by. They have a lot of awesome workshops. Allison Moon We'll be teaching workshops. I'll be teaching some workshops. It's going to be really exciting. So that's a little public announcement for Camp Beaverton for Wayward Girls. A little walk here on the train tracks. And now I kind of forget what I typed in to talk about. Oh, breaking up. When is it time to quit? So here are just some quick thoughts. I actually have something on my website about ending bad relationships, and I'll put the link there. You can download a little podcast teleclass that I did. But the first thing I should just ask and let you know is, everyone has their own journey and has to figure out their own stuff. I do not condone abusive relationships, so it's my personal advice that I don't think people should stay in relationships that are not healthy for them, and I know that that's really tricky to say. People stay in relationships for all kinds of reasons, and sometimes people, air quotes, have to stay for reasons because of safety, their kids, whatever, all kinds of stuff. So in that really short sentence of my belief, what I would ask or invite people to do is try to find support that's a great fit for you, outside of maybe your friends and family, so that you can get like a third opinion, some sort of professional opinion, whether it's a support group or a hotline or therapy. Seek out the resources where you can figure out if you're in a relationship that you need to get out of, and so that you can keep yourself safe, and if you have kids and animals and things like that, so you can keep them safe too. There's a lot of fucked up shit out there, and while I grew up in a family that had an alcoholic mom and a dad who had some challenges with telling the truth all the time, and that was emotionally challenging and abusive at times, I was never physically threatened with harm, and I just want to say that. So with that caveat, then the ideas of like when do you quit, like when is it time to go, when should you break up, I think the easiest way or one way to look at it is this kind of, this idea, this analogy that I use in a lot of my workshops and in my 3-day weekend retreats and stuff, is just the idea of, if you imagine a car that's driving up a hill, not a train driving up a hill, but a car. When the car is driving up a hill, the engine has to work harder. It just has to. And that's normal. There's nothing wrong with having to, put the pedal, a little bit more gas or shift the gears so you can get more strength to the engine. That's normal and nothing's wrong. Versus when you're driving around town with the parking brake on, and the parking brake doesn't need to be on. It's creating all this extra effort and friction that doesn't need to be there. But if how would you know if you grew up in a family where the parking brake was always on? If the only adult relationships you ever saw around you or modeled for you were relationships, kind of like if you were taught to drive a car and you got in and somebody showed you this is where you put the keys and this is how you adjust the mirrors and here's how you adjust your seat and put your seatbelt on, and right by your side there's this lever, and if you pull it up, push the button and pull it up, you need to do that before you start the car and drive away. What if you were taught that relationships need to have the parking brake on? That love and relationships is hard, is all this effort, is the smell, that loving someone is the smell of burning brake pads and sluggish car, when in reality having the brake, the emergency brake on when you're driving around town is not helpful. It is not helpful. It's not good for the car. It's not good for you. You don't get better gas mileage out of your relationship. But with all this extra effort and how I look at relationships and how we kind of frame love as this sacrifice, like the more you love somebody, the more you will sacrifice for them, the more discomfort you will go through. No wonder people, drive around with the parking brake on, because the harder it is, the more I must love you, right? The more hell that I go through, the more I must care. Now, that's very different than, you're sacrificing for your kids. You're, you have to work harder in a relationship because somebody lost their job or somebody got sick, or there's these other stresses going on in the relationship. Somebody's trying, to go back to school, or money's tight, or whatever. Those things, in my estimation, that's the normal part. Like, that's when you have to work harder in a relationship and nothing's wrong. And this other idea is something's wrong. Like, there's all this effort that doesn't have to be there. And so that's why, I would consider, or I would invite you, I'm just going to show you this, all this cool graffiti. I would invite you to spend some time thinking about for yourself, when is it the parking brake and when is it just normal driving up the hill effort? And really start to question the role modeling you grew up around with your parents, other adults, grandparents, whatever. What kind of relationships were modeled for you growing up, and did you pick up a bad habit of pulling that parking brake on and thinking that is normal? Unfortunately, it is kind of normal because a lot of people are making this mistake because no one ever taught them how to notice when it's off. Normal, meaning that everyone's doing it, doesn't mean it's right, doesn't mean it's smart. And so looking at relationships from that perspective and starting to assess, like, when is it the parking brake? And from there you can start to kind of ask yourself, well, if it's the parking brake, am I in a relationship with somebody who's willing to work on this so we can take the parking brake down and actually have a healthier relationship? And if you're with somebody who after some amount of time, maybe it's a couple of months, maybe it's a year, of you two going to therapy or taking a workshop, I do think you should get some outside help in that. If you try to do all these changes and teach each other how to drive in a healthy way again, if you try to do it alone, it's not that you can't pull it off, it's just that you end up kind of being each other's therapists and each other's relationship coaches during the journey, and I don't think that's really healthy. I think, go get a relationship coach. Go take a weekend seminar or something like that to work on relationship skills. In yesterday's video we talked about, like family constellation therapy workshops where you're like working on your mommy and daddy issues so those issues aren't running your relationship. I think you doing those workshops, and you can do them together as a couple, but you guys doing the work for yourselves with yourself and then cheering each other on is a way better use of your efforts and way healthier dynamic. Plus you get extra support, a third opinion or a fourth opinion if you're working with several people. I just think that's healthier than you trying to be cheerleader, coach, therapist, and lover to your partners. And again, for those of you in non-monogamous relationships, you might realize you have a whole fleet of cars all driving around with the parking brake on. And so also just be kind with yourself, and you don't have to rush to any conclusions about breaking up. I mean, again, like prefaced, if you're in a not safe situation, you might have to make some quicker decisions for your safety. And I'll, if anyone is really geeky about that kind of stuff and has resources, I almost tripped, has resources you want to put in the comments for support groups and things like that, for domestic violence and emotional abuse, then please go right ahead. Let's source each other as a community, because that's not my specific area of expertise, and I know some of you are nerds and smarty pantses about that kind of thing. And also Google exists, so you can Google around as well. I think I want to leave it there. I mean, I don't want to get too much into it, but you know, as far as like ending a bad relationship, then there's the next steps of how do you get out of a relationship, how do you transition mindfully, and you know, hopefully leave the campsite better than you found it, rather than burn the whole place down. But that's more of a topic for another time, and I'll put some links to some of the stuff on my website about breaking up. But I think a really, really useful thing is just to be able to assess if you're in a good relationship, if it's healthy and just you're working really hard because it's a tough time, or if it's that parking brake thing. Another great thing to look at for those of you who have watched my videos on dating your species, understanding what your bottom lines are and your deal breakers in your relationships. If you're in a relationship and a lot of those deal breakers have been broken, if you've crossed a lot of those bottom lines, then that might be an indicator that you're destined to maybe break up or transition a relationship. Again, you know, you should read the 5 Languages of Apology by Gary Chapman, and I think it's Jennifer or Susan something. He co-wrote it. But that can be really useful in just learning how to apologize to each other and how to forgive each other. It's a super great book. And then there's another great book by Tammy Nelson called, I want to say The New Monogamy, which is about infidelity, but there's some great stuff in that about, you know, making amends and rebuilding trust. So sometimes you can do all that, even when bottom lines have been broken. But generally, if you have a bunch of bottom lines, and sometimes you don't know if they were broken because you don't have them, you don't know what they are yet, but if there's a ton of bottom lines broken and a lot of resentment, it can be tough to heal all that. Not impossible, just really tough. And you know, sometimes it's not an easy choice or conversation, but I just wanted to share these thoughts kind of as a beginner thing for people to think about. And you don't have to break up with anybody this weekend. You don't have to, you know, burn any relationships to the ground. If you're starting to consider from this video, should I break up? Is it time to quit? Go slow. You don't make any rash decisions. And one more time, if your life is in danger, then get some support, okay? That's going to be it. Have a great weekend, everybody. I hope you enjoyed our little walk by the train tracks. Hit some emoticons on the way out. If you want, leave your questions and comments and your thoughts, resources if you have them, in the comment section, and I'll answer them when I get a chance. But have a great weekend. For those of you celebrating 4th of July, happy 4th of July. Happy birthday, America. And for those of you in other parts of the world or celebrating other things, I hope you have a good weekend. Take care of yourselves, everyone. And go check out Camp Beaverton for Wayward Girls. And even if you're camping with somebody else at Burning Man, swing on by the Beavs. I'll be hanging out there. Allison Moon, a bunch of us. So come say hi. Have a beer or a non-adult beverage as well. All right. Bye, everyone.